All right, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Restoration Success Show. I'm not sure what episode number this is. I haven't been keeping count, but that's not the important part. Today we have Michelle Blevins with us from CNR Magazine. How's it going, Michelle?
It's going great. Thanks for having me, Jamie. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, likewise, likewise. So a lot of our listeners might already be familiar with who you are, what you do, but for those that aren't, can you just tell us a little bit about like your journey and kind of how you ended up in the restoration industry?
Sure. I've been in the industry 9.5 years. April of 2025 will be my 10-year mark. Kind of got here by accident, like most people do. I feel like most people don't, go to college or leave high school thinking I'm going to be a restorer, be in the restoration industry or anything related to insurance at all. I kind of stumbled here after a few jobs out of college. I worked at a small town newspaper in Indiana. Probably a lot of your listeners have heard my story before. And that was really where I got my feet wet and learned the importance of relationships in business and how, college doesn't teach you in journalism school the importance of relationships. It teaches you how to write a story and how to research and how to do those things. But relationships, as with business in general, are such like the core, I think, of business in general. So that first job, it was in a podunk town in the middle of nowhere. And I had the opportunity to like befriend the sheriff, befriend the fire department. I hosted a debate for congressional and local candidates for an election at the high school, and actually got like congressional candidates to come to a debate that I hosted, and got to ride along in the fire truck when they were going to house fires, and ride in the helicopter when the sheriff was trying to make meth busts or sorry, weed, like marijuana grows in the middle of cornfields because they would grow them like, in the middle of the crops. So you can't see them from the road, and ride around in like the plane or helicopter looking for marijuana grows. Be there after meth lab busts, like right away standing outside. I would get kind of the insider scoop on everything. And I loved that. I thought that that was just, being involved in the community and learning how communities work and government works and all of those things, I feel like really fueled me for the rest of my journey. After that, I moved with my husband to Northern Michigan. We were both from Michigan. And so back to Michigan, we moved for him to get his kind of like first job as a videographer at a TV station in Northern Michigan. The local newspaper didn't have any job openings at the time because we lived in Cadillac, which is a pretty small town. I ended up working at the newspaper, or I mean, sorry, the TV station. I was there for 6 years. I started as an intern. The news director was like, I guess I'll give you a shot and pay you $9 an hour or whatever to be an intern. Within a few weeks, he hired me as a producer, and I moved my way up to executive producer of the whole TV station. And that was my first leadership role where I got to kind of get my feet wet in mentoring recent college grads and help people learn how to tell good stories, good script writing, good like how to speak in a way that is personable and you can relate to people. And so then we had our first child when we lived up there. And so when he was about 6 months old, we decided, hey, it'd be great to move back to Metro Detroit, which is where we're both from. Both of our parents were in that area. And so we were job hunting for quite a while, and I ended up stumbling upon a job in the industry. I decided I wasn't going to apply for anything that didn't like get me excited, because the job at the TV station was soul sucking. I hated it so much that I was like, I'm not applying for anything that isn't going to be something that I think I'll actually enjoy. Um, and that's how I got hired at R&R, which I think most people know. I was there for 6 years. I remember going through the interview there and being asked, I thought for sure I wasn't going to get the job. One of the last questions I was asked was, well, this is a very male dominated industry. Are you going to be okay with that? Are you going to be able to like relate to the men in the industry and all that? And, coming from what I had done prior, I was like, yeah, it's fine. Um, wouldn't have even probably given it a second thought. So did get the job, was there for 6 years, loved the industry, realized after a few years that I probably never wanted to leave the industry. I always tell people that I liked the opportunity to be on the flip side of the story. Coming from news, I was there when there was a house fire, or we'd had a lot of localized flooding, and actually there they would build houses up on stilts to get them above the floodplain. I don't know if that's even a thing anymore, maybe, but this was like rural Indiana, and they used to raise up the houses, and that was one of the ways that they would like get them up out of floodplains and whatever. But I had no idea what happened after the news crews left, after I wrote my initial story about the loss. I was never there to see the rebuilds, the remediation jobs, all of that. So then being able to be on the flip side at R&R, I really liked that. And I liked the servant's heart that comes from the industry and the people here. And everybody was very accepting. I mean, I remember my first, like my I was 1 week into the job and I went to an RIA show in 2015 and met a number of people that I still have close friendships with today. So everybody's really welcoming. It's an easy industry, I think, to get into as long as you're open to kind of putting yourself out there. So anyway, fast forward 2021. I had the opportunity to buy CNR from the RIA, the Restoration Industry Association. CNR is the oldest publication in the industry. We think it's been around since like the 1940s, not totally sure. Um, and at the time I bought it, they had been publishing maybe 2 a year digitally. Didn't have a website, didn't have a social media presence, none of that. So but I knew that the CNR brand was the most highly respected brand in the industry. I knew that even when I was at R&R. I knew looking at CNR, like that is the magazine that people respect the most because RIA was behind it, because some of the biggest thought leaders in the industry helped found this magazine and keep it going and write for it. So I've just been working to build the brand to what it is today since buying it, and trying to keep the integrity in check the way that the RIA created it to be, and that's where we are today.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That was a long answer. I never talked that long on a podcast. Holy crap. Sorry.
Well, we know the whole journey. So
You did the whole journey.
The whole journey.
That was so long. Okay.
Yeah. We're gonna need to pause the podcast, take an intermission, and then no, just kidding. No, that was great. So as far as content and topics, that you guys do on your, email newsletters and in the print version, or or the online versions. I mean, it appears that you kind of cover any and everything restoration, like all facets of the business, right? I mean, it's any and everything restoration. It's not anything in just. So if anybody was wondering, like, well, it's not really applicable to me, like if you're in this industry, it should be applicable based on what.
Yes. Most of what I hear from people is like, whenever I get the magazine, I flip through and there's always some articles for me and some articles that just aren't for me. And that's fine. But there's something in every magazine for everybody. We try to have every magazine have like maybe a little bit of technical content, a little bit of business development content, a little bit of leadership content. So you're going to get like the full swing of content, no matter where you sit in a restoration company. There should be something for you.
Yeah. And I love that because everybody's, I mean, depending on where they're, how they're involved in the industry, but even, we work directly with restoration companies trying to grow and scale, but everybody's in a different, part of the journey. And I think that's where certain articles will speak to you based on the problem you're trying to solve, is the way I look at it.
Yep.
And that's, I didn't always do it this way, but that's kind of the way I like to read publications or whatever. It's like, what is the biggest constraint I'm trying to solve in my business time? What can help me fix that? Instead of just reading things to read things, like somebody told me that once, I'm like, wow. I mean, that seems obvious, but a lot of people do not think about that. They're just doing it. It's like, dude, what's your biggest problem? That's what you need to be solved to get to the next level. So I love, like, you guys cover different topics. I'm sure, like you said.
Yeah.
And then they could always pull out the magazine too. It's like, what? I saw an article on, hiring more technicians. Let me go revisit that. That's the problem now I'm trying to solve. So that's awesome. What so I know we were talking a little bit about this before we we went live, because you have a pretty good pulse and understanding on like industry trends, what you've been seeing lately. Like I think that's, we're coming at the end of 2024, about to roll into 2025. Like, can you touch on just some of that stuff and research you guys have been doing and what you're seeing?
Sure. Yeah. So that's a big question. So I'll try to keep it short. But when we're recording this the end of October. Our annual State of the Industry report comes out next week. So next Wednesday, November 4th. So 6th. I don't know. November Wednesday, first week of November, that Wednesday it comes out.
Yeah.
So this year, this is the third year that we've done it, and we've had good participation every year. This year really blew it out of the water, and the data is so good. So what I have been branding this year as it's been an interesting year. I think that there were a lot of restorers, especially at the beginning of the year, Q1 and Q2, that were really struggling. I mean, claims volume was down 22% year over year, Q1 of this year, Q1 of last year, according to Verisk data. The end of 2023 was slow. So we kind of carried an end a Q4 2023 into a slow Q1 of 2024. And that like kind of had the trickle down effect in the industry. I think that made everybody kind of tighten their belts, and it trickled down. I saw it as restorers were tightening their belts because the claim volume was slower. Vendors also were needing to tighten up their budgets and figure out different ways to get people to buy because restorers just weren't buying as much as they were maybe earlier in 2023. There's probably a lot that has to do with that, inflation, interest rates, all of the things that we're seeing in the economy as well. So thankfully things did start picking up like more end of Q2. And then we've had, none of the state of industry data is going to be reflective of the hurricanes that just went through Milton and Helene and the massive damage that has brought. I do talk a little bit about the numbers and the amount of damage they think has been done that's insured and uninsured in the article. But so that's why I call it an interesting year. We started really down, and there are a lot of restorers, I think, that really struggled earlier this year and thought, gosh, this is different. People are more hesitant to file claims now. I know that we'll get into it, so I won't fully go into this now, but a big pain point in the industry is getting paid. That seems to be kind of compounding for restorers right now. And but the end of the year seems to be ending on a high note because of these disasters. And so I guess we'll see.
Yeah, that's yeah. And one thing you just touched on too, I mean, have you seen or have you heard from your reports or any people you network with and talk to? I mean, is getting paid gotten worse for whatever reason? I mean, based on what I've seen it's always like you're always waiting.
Yeah.
Like that's if you're dealing with insurance companies, like they're not just stroking checks like for fun. Like that's always been a battle. It's always taken time. Like have you seen? I mean, are there things happening that's made that worse that you've seen or heard, or is it just?
Yes, I have. Yes. So in 2022 and 2023, the biggest pain point for restorers was hiring and retention, right? So we do know that the job market has loosened up a little bit. So that's become, I think, a little bit easier. And maybe restorers have also gotten better at the strategy of that. I can also say I know some restorers have taken advantage of some other restorers being slow this year and have gotten major talent hires from other restoration companies that are slow. So that's kind of like an interesting tidbit. But getting paid this year, this is the first year that it is the number one pain point for restorers. And we are seeing kind of a flux toward it taking, there being more claims that are taking 60 plus days to get paid in full. I don't really know what the solution to that is. I mean, there's obviously good processes and systems are one. Using the standards to reinforce your scopes is one. Having good documentation, making sure you have those photos or 360 scans, that's one. Maybe leaning into services like surety. If you have a mortgage company on the check, they can help you with the mortgage company, or leaning into one claim solution for the mitigation jobs, whatever that may be. But I do think that getting paid is getting harder, not easier. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's yeah. It's just I mean, even before this year, that's always been a pain point I've seen from our
Hmm.
clients. Is like, I mean, it's a great industry. Like I said, a lot of you get to help people, you can make some money. I mean,
Yep.
I like it because this is a win-win for everybody involved if everything's done right. You know what I mean? That makes
Yeah.
it fun. But the getting paid, like that's always been a little like it's just like I said, they're not they're not just whenever you ask, they're like, oh yeah, sure. How much is it? Okay, here's the check. I mean, it's never been
No.
that easy, but yeah,
No.
and you touched on something too that I think because everybody might not think this through, but I've heard this a lot through conversations I've had. But when it comes to finding good talent, retaining good talent, but when it comes to finding good talent, it's like a lot of the people, the A players you want, like they already have a job, and so that's where
Yep.
recruiting. Like the people you want, they're probably already working somewhere. So keep that in mind.
Yes.
If people aren't ever really thought about that, like that's a great way to start finding some talent.
Yeah.
'Cause like I said, they're probably already somewhere.
That's 100% true. I was also a recruiter for a short stint for about 3 years in the industry, and we called those passive candidates. And those are the ones that, yeah, I,
Yeah,
yeah, gonna
yeah,
not be a proponent of poaching from your competitors. However, you're exactly right that the people that you want probably already are employed.
yeah.
And, you know, and if they're like going to come unemployed for some reason, they probably already have another job offer lined up from somewhere else. So,
hmm
mhm.
Yeah, and that's well, and this will kind of lead into us. What I want to talk to you about is, I mean, because some of those people that are slower than normal, or they're hitting retirement age. I mean, not only do some of those people might have good talent, but to any of you listening that are trying to get into mergers or acquisitions, like
Mhm.
actually, I was catching up with a client. Yeah, like he's ran into this situation. Like some people are just done sometimes.
Yeah.
That could lead
Yep.
to acquisition, right? Growth through acquisition could be another strategy that people can keep in mind. So not only could you get good talent, you might just be able to get you know their book of business, their assets, however you structure it. But that's a
Yep.
different angle too.
Yep.
So yeah, let's touch on that a little bit because I know you have a pretty good pulse and have a lot of conversations around like M&A activity in the industry. So what have you kind of seen in 2024? Um,
So this year has been slower than the past few years, of course. I think like the bigger industry players, they haven't had as many acquisitions as they've had in recent years. It was a little slower for, the BMS Cats, the First Onsites, the ATIs, those Blue Skies, those companies. Where moves happened this year were more in the PE space. I can say from state of the industry that more companies were reached out to about acquisitions this year than in the past, which was interesting. So calls and attempts to acquire were up this year, but fewer people, I think, got to the closing table. That could partially be because of interest rates, valuations are down. A few years ago, people were paying many multiples beyond because of interest rates and all that. Now that interest rates are higher, the multiples have changed. And so I think like High Ground and Alpine would probably be the two PE companies that come to mind that have made moves this year, have grown, have had other companies come under their wings. But that's a little bit of a different situation because often those brands get to keep their brand. They're going to continue running the way that they run today for the most part. They just have that PE backing versus if you're bought by an industry company, you're probably taking on their name. The other smaller, but I think still prevalent and notable trend are restoration companies in the same market merging or one acquiring the other to kind of get a leg up on the competition in the market without needing to sell to a bigger player in the industry. So we saw that happen in Atlanta, and two companies merged there and they now I think cover the entire region around Atlanta because of that acquisition. And it also happened in Idaho. Two companies in Idaho just merged at the beginning of October, and they're now, I think, if not the biggest, probably the second biggest restoration company in the state now. But that's two local companies that were not so interested in being acquired by PE or a bigger company finding ways to keep their brands alive and stay competitive in a consolidating market, which I think is a big concern for especially the independent, like Main Street restorers that are watching their competitors get bought out by PE or industry players. So I think a lot of independents are trying to figure out how do we stay competitive in a consolidating market.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, based on what I've seen, I mean, yeah, I imagine it just depends on the restorer themselves and what their goals
Mm-hmm.
are and what they're looking to do. I've almost seen it
Yeah.
playing out any and every way. It's like, hey, there's no, yeah, there's normal ways to go about it, this, that, and other, but I mean, you can structure the deal like however you want at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, you might not get, but that, yeah, that is interesting. But yeah, to your point on the activity, yeah, imagine I mean, my best guess too is, I mean, because I've even slowed down some other business things I've done because this is the year of uncertainty, I think, too. Like the
Yep.
election coming up, interest rates, people are like, oh, maybe if I wait this out, if they keep coming down, that'll help that'll help, get cheaper money, this, that, and other. So I think the uncertainty has brought a lot of like, hey, let's just keep everything on pause. Let's see how this plays out. So it'll be, I imagine that sidelines a lot of people. But the crazy thing is, I think in the past month, a couple of our clients I've caught up with, they've gotten unsolicited offers still.
Yes.
And neither of them were
Yes.
looking. I mean, they both are like crushing it. They're like, no, we're good, and they know they're like, no, we're gonna double, triple, like we're going for that bigger multiple, like, and I mean, but I thought that was interesting. They're like, man, we got these people like staying all over us, trying to scoop us up. So I thought that was interesting. Like I said, there's still some activity out there.
There is. They're not stopping. Like, even though the activity is slowed down, the companies looking to acquire are still out there and strongly going at it for sure.
Yeah. And I think, something that 2020, in 2020 was eye opening. I think, because I mean, there's ebbs and flows, and, business is cyclical. There's always, like we're talking about, there's been a little bit, a few struggles this year on certain aspects. But I mean, the thing is about restoration is, I mean, good economy, bad economy, people are still going to need help. Houses are still going to catch on fire. They're still going to flood. And you can't ignore those problems.
Yep.
So I think that's, private equity guys are like, oh, this might not be a bad industry to look into. Because it's, for those reasons, and not there's others as well. But cool. Is there anything like, well, I know this is kind of this is like a buzzword and getting tossed around a lot, but I'm obviously paying attention to it. It is coming in. It's coming in hot. I mean, the whole AI conversation. Like, is there? I mean, from your perspective, I mean, where do you see it? I mean, it's obviously going to affect the industry. Like, we can't be naive about that. But I mean, have you had any conversations around that? Have you seen any trends?
Oh, yeah.
Based on what you've seen, of kind of where, level one of this would be?
That's a good question. Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations around this. I've led some panels on it at industry shows and had some podcasts of my own talking about it. It's a big topic. And I've found that restorers are all kind of at different levels with it. There are some that haven't adopted anything at all yet and don't know where to start. And so then there's conversations revolving around, well, let's start with ChatGPT or a large language model like that, to help you make your emails to adjusters more professional, or to help you write a document that you need to write, or whatever that may be. Starting at the ground level with large language models is kind of, I think, where a lot of restorers are at. One of the conversations I had at Access, the Access, which is Alacrity's show this year, was a restorer who raised his hand during a panel and was like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what you're talking about. Because the panel was with people that are way into the tech space and really understand AI and where it's going in the industry. And we dialed it way back and we started at the ground level. So I think the first step is restorers learning, like, you're not going to break it. So get in and learn how to use it, learn how to give it the voice that you want, learn how to get the information out of it that you want in the way that you want it. So then once you're taking it a step further, I think we're going to start seeing even more movement in estimating that, and creating scopes of work. I think that that's probably the place that AI is going to have the biggest impact on the industry, especially once the software companies and like the DocuSketches and Matterports and um, those companies start having like contents recognition with their cameras and capabilities. There's some of that now, but not super robust. So I think the more that contents recognition is going to come into it, I think that'll be interesting. I think the estimating space is probably the biggest place where AI is going to play a role, whether it's checking estimates for accuracy before submitting it, or um, again, identifying objects in a 360 scan to help with the Xactimate scope estimate, whatever that may be. I think that's probably where AI is going to step in and play the biggest role. There's always going to be the human component, like you said. Like AI is not going to replace restorers entirely, but maybe it can eventually help this getting paid issue be less of an issue. Um, we'll see.
Mhm. I think it'll make its way into that for sure. Like it's
Mhm.
eventually, I think it's going to have its hands on all facets. But yeah, I agree. Estimating is kind of like some low hanging fruit to where, and even like the way I look at it is to help with analyzing data and pattern
Yeah.
recognition. That,
Yeah.
I mean, you can do that now. Instead of reading
Hmm.
through a 50-page document, you can upload a
Yes.
spreadsheet, whatever. Hey, what patterns do you see, to help you in the
Hmm.
decision making process? Should I spend more money here, less here? Like that alone, like I'm doing that song, and I'm like, dude, this is a game changer. Like you can,
Yes.
and again, but you have to know what you're doing to be able to see. You can't just, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Like you can't just because it says this. Like
Uh-huh.
but if for speed on analyzing, making decisions, you can kind of go back and forth with it. It might be a spot. Oh man, I didn't think about that, or I didn't see the pattern between those two numbers. So helping
Hmm.
like with the math piece is kind of in my mind like step one. Like you said, estimates, you can put a bunch in there. Like, hey, did we miss something here? Like, you see a pattern here? Like, so
Yep.
yeah, it's yeah, I'm excited for it. But I mean, to everybody listening, I also think, like you said, to the guy, he's like, I mean, what is it? Like, I think, like, I'd also encourage people not to get shiny objects. Like, do not
Hmm.
go. One of my mentors is one of the best advice. Like, if you're trying to grow and scale your company, what is your biggest constraint at the moment? Focus on solving that problem. And if they like,
Hmm.
it's probably not you going to tinker around and chat GPT, like, I mean, because they can
Yeah.
sit there all day talking back and forth. It's like, you literally have no jobs coming in like that. You can't even pay the bills. You're sitting there talking to ChatGPT. So I think this everybody being cognizant of where they're at would be. I mean, because we still have guys reaching out to us like, and some of them might already be doing a couple million a year working with TPAs and that other, and then we're like, you literally don't have a website, and they're like, well, I don't like that, and that's where I think people, you know what I mean? Like it's still
Oy.
and that's a problem we help solve. But like I think like you should not be worried about Chat GPT if like I go to
No,
Google and I like you're literally nowhere to be.
no,
You know what I mean? So I
no.
think like focusing on that's where I think people just depending on some people will be way up to speed on stuff, some people won't. So that's why I think it'd be
Hmm.
helpful for everybody listening. Just kind of like everybody's at a different you know
Yes.
part of the journey on it. But I would encourage everybody to just keep it in the back of your mind and do not think, some people are like, oh, the internet doesn't matter. Like back when I started, it's kind of like, you can't be serious. Like you think Google's like just gonna I mean? Like I would just encourage people to have an open mindset because like I can promise you AI it is here to stay and it will it'll affect all of us for sure. And I
Yes.
will think you will get run over if you do not, like in my mind.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather be ahead of it and then like, all right, maybe didn't. But I think everything the people I'm talking to, they're like, oh, it is moving and it's moving quickly. So do not be naive. And but I use it. I get excited with it. Honestly, 'cause it's like, dude, we're about to live through an interesting time.
We are. We are. And there's always changes, right? I remember when I got into the industry in 2015, it was the era of the paper monster and next gear. And and they were working on getting rid of people having filing cabinets and moving toward using Dash and, and Circle and all of the like, let's get you out of having all of these paper forms and doing your estimates like in Excel and getting you to be more tech friendly, tech forward. So we have overcome that hurdle, I think. I think most of the industry at this point has adopted technology. Some have adopted it way more than others, of course. But that's kind of probably the route that AI will go. And there's, probably far more that AI is going to be able to do, but um, adoption will happen over time.
For sure.
People figure it out.
Yeah, for sure. What so what's on the roadmap for CNR? Like, what do you guys have coming up? And so you got the industry report coming out next week, right? We just next week. Everybody keep an eye out for next week. It was
next week.
Yeah, the Wednesday is the 6th, sometime next week.
Yeah.
What else you guys have in the pipeline that for just to finish out 2024, going into next year that our listeners you might want them to be aware of?
Sure. So state of the industry is the big one. We do 3 webinars in conjunction with it. So the first one will be the day that everything is released. There's a full magazine with it, with a bunch of content that complements the study. And then there's also a full book that you can download for free. We do state of the industry in partnership with Know How. So Know How produces the book and we produce the magazine part, and it turns out great. So the book part, all of this again is free, but the book part has actual like action steps in every chapter that you can take back to your team and actually work through. Like in the getting paid chapter, here's some things to think about that might help you get paid. Take this discussion to your next leadership team meeting. Same with technology, same with hiring. Every section in there has a full page of like kind of prompts and discussion topics for you to take to your team, so you have actual actionable items to take back. Beyond that, show season's kind of winding down, so I will be at Violin's business planning events next week, actually, in Florida. Those are awesome. I think that they have record attendance this year, and so I think that that's, again, because it's been an interesting year for restorers. I think, are seeing an uptick in people thinking, oh, I might need a business plan. I might need to be a little more formal about my processes here. I'm going to Magic Plan's event in the beginning of December. That's the last event of the year. They have some big industry names coming to be on panels and kind of have some open dialogue about the state of the industry, which I think is really interesting. And then moving into the beginning of 2025 is Interconnect, which is CoreLogic's show. And Verisk's is in February. So I feel like the year starts out strong in the technology space. We have a number of awards. So restorers should always pay attention to that. We have the Unsung Heroes Award, which we just awarded the last ones in September. And that's recognizing a top person in the field, a top person in the office, and a top person at the executive level within the industry. And I think that that's so important. We call them unsung heroes because often these people are behind the scenes and might not get the credit that they deserve. And so this is a great opportunity to really highlight somebody on your team who you think deserves an award. We do an award on the vendor side for stellar customer service. So that's another thing that we have. We started it this year and we'll have it again next year. We do the Restoring Kindness Project. So if anybody hasn't heard of that in the month of May, we try to encourage the entire industry to find ways to give back and serve their communities in different ways than you normally do. There's a website for that. It's restoringkindnessusa.com. There's postcards that you can print off and put your company logo on it. So if you're like at the farmer's market and buy all the strawberries and are letting people have a free thing of strawberries, you can tuck your postcard in there. And it's like, hey, just wanted to bring you a little ray of sunshine today, courtesy of whatever your company name is. So it's good marketing, right? Too. It's good marketing and just a way to give back whatever way you choose to. That's kind of it. We do a lot throughout the year. So for anybody who's not a subscriber, you can go to our website. Everything again is free. So you can just click the subscribe button at the top and choose if you want print, if you want digital, what you're interested in, what you're not.
Yeah. So for everybody listening, what's what's the easiest way for them to subscribe? I mean, just Googling CNR magazine. Like, do you want to say your website just so if anybody
Sure.
wants
Sure. So the website is the letter C and the word and. So CANDR magazine.com, CandR magazine.com. And yeah, there's a big red subscribe button up at the top. That's the easiest way. People can email me too if they want to, but that it's easier to just go to the website and do it. It's a quick form and off you go.
Yeah,
So
and you have a lot of great resources on the website, and it's free. To everybody listening, you might as well subscribe, get some value. I mean, you're dropping a ton of value on there, so us in the industry appreciate that. Cool. Well, we'll wrap it up here. I appreciate you coming on today, Michelle. This was great. We covered a bunch of different things, and everybody listening, go to C and R and is spelled out magazine.com and subscribe today and stay in the loop of what's going on and be on the lookout for her industry reports. I think I'm excited about that, honestly, next week. So,
perfect.
all right, we'll wrap it
Thanks
up
so much
here.
for having me, Jamie.
Yeah,
I
you're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
We'll have to do it again. All right, have a good rest of the day.
You too.